Welcome to Build in Public, the podcast where industry leaders pull back the curtain on how they actually built it. The hard calls, the pivots, the moments AI changed everything, and the lessons they wish they'd known sooner. I'm your host, Troy Mann. Each episode, we go deep with founders, operators, and innovators who are growing businesses in a world that's moving faster than ever. No polished narratives, no highlight reels, just real conversations about the journey. Let's build. Today, I'm joined by John Zeolla, founder and CEO of Zenable, a company focused on helping organizations build safer, more governed AI-assisted development workflows. John has a deep background in cloud-native security and compliance automation. He's also a SANS instructor, a CNCF ambassador, and longtime voice in the infrastructure and security community. What makes this conversation especially interesting is that John approaches AI from a systems and operational perspective, not just how companies adopt AI, but how they do it responsibly, securely, and scale without slowing down engineering teams. John, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Troy. Thanks for having me on.
So tell me about the problem that originally pushed you to start Zenable. What were you trying to solve for?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there was a number of different problems, I think. So if I go a little bit further back in my experience, so I spent a lot of time at some large organizations helping developers ship things to production, write software, and do it securely, but also operationally well, right? High quality software, good uptime, good observability. I did that for a number of years. And at some point, I started a consulting company. So my first company that I started was CISO, and we did cybersecurity consulting for companies. And specifically, what we did was we worked with SaaS tech companies, and we made it easy, automated, to follow the rules that they set for themselves. Right. So they set this governance saying that every time we take customer data, we're going to encrypt it before we store it in a database. And my role at that company, and what I did for 7, maybe 8 years, was write code by hand in the good old days before we had AI, just typing on a keyboard. I would write code that would say, oh, if you want to write this sentence that says, when this happens, we do that. That's a process. I'm going to write code that checks for evidence of that process being followed. And so I did that for a number of years. That was great. I really enjoyed it. That's where I got into the CNCF. You mentioned being an ambassador. I do a lot of work with Kubernetes, AWS, Azure, cloud native environments. And it was these guardrails, right? You have a process. Let's see how much evidence we have that you are following it, and see if we can find any evidence that you aren't following it, and we can fix those, or we can carve out an exception for those, right? And so I did that stuff by hand, and then AI hit. Right. And so I had actually been working in the machine learning space since about 2013. I did some open source work and some large scale data analytics. There was a project called Apache Metron that I worked on. But AI hit, and great. Everything that I used to help developers do is the same, but now it's 20 times as fast. And so the demand for the automated enforcement of processes went way up, went through the roof. And so that's where I decided, okay, I can hand make things, these boutique individualized solutions for each company, or I could pivot and say, let's make a platform that solves this more generally. And then I can help way more companies because there's way more demand. I can't possibly keep up with doing it one company at a time anymore. I had done probably 15 to 20 rollouts at CISO, at my time at CISO. And then Zenable, it's like, okay, now I can take that experience. Let me build a platform, do it the way I wanted to always, but I'm just going to I spent a year and a half just building the platform and the foundation. And then that was about 2 years ago I started. So about 6 months ago, we went GA. And now we're onboarding people into the platform specifically to say, okay, you have some process or some requirement. You want to provide a sentence? Good. You give us that sentence. And then we can go automatically deploy telemetry agents, AI agents to work with developers, deterministic guardrails, all this great fancy stuff to just say, what's the likelihood and where are we actually following the requirements that we set for ourselves in our company?
I find the topic of AI governance to be interesting. AI is moving rapidly. You can't have a conversation without talking about AI. It's so pervasive. And when you get into smaller companies, there's a need and desire and you know a thirst, whether it's out of, I need to solve for this, or I'm afraid I'm going to get left behind, to implement AI. And I think there's also a lot of rogue AI with employees. What are the conversations you're having with your clients about AI governance? And is that really yet to catch up because they don't consider it?
So I found that really starting in January of this year, people knew to ask for governance of AI. Before that, I had been working on this AI governance project, but people didn't really know to ask that question yet, or at least it wasn't popular. There were definitely people asking that question, but it was much more niche. starting in January of 2026, that became a thing that people were looking for is how do I govern these systems? And a lot of it came actually through chatbots, right? People would put chatbots on their website, and then the chatbot made a silly mistake, caused a lawsuit or some sort of loss. And they're like, "Oh, crap, we're not managing these things particularly well. How do we do that?" And then at the same time, we're seeing AI for software development and these other use cases really become much higher quality, move much faster. The tools have caught up. And a lot of the enterprises are, okay, we're ready to adopt this now. I'm talking with a couple companies that are like 8,000 developers. How do I possibly get my arms around how they're all using AI? And so the most common questions that I get since January, since people have really been intently asking this question is, um, how do I know what's even happening? Right? I don't even want to impose rules yet. I don't want to restrict anything. I simply want to know what's the inventory and how are people using it today so I can start to figure out what are the patterns and what's the highest ROI, most valuable thing to our company that's happening using AI, and let's focus on that. Standard risk analysis. Look at the impact and the likelihood. If it's very likely that the AI will cause an issue and the impact of that issue would be very high, I start there and I'm going to reduce that risk down and put some controls in place. But right now, it's a lot about observability. It's simply who is using what tool, how much are they using it, and can I get information to fill this form of impact and likelihood so I can even figure out what to do next, right? And so it's, in cybersecurity, we always say, what's the first thing you do when you're trying to roll out cybersecurity? It's figure out what your inventory is because you can't secure things that you don't even know exist. So you simply need to know what do you have, and then you can talk about risks and next. So that's another big part of this is people are just like, where is the AI in my environment? And so those are kind of like the big questions that are happening right now. And a lot of the like tweaks and tuning and features and things that I'm rolling out are to essentially support reports, right? People want to be able to run a report and say, who's my top talker? Who's using it the most? Who hasn't touched it yet? Can I just see that information?
We talked a little bit offline about the do it, yourselfers out there because AI has become very friendly. And I'm sure there's a bunch of pitfalls that you've seen. But what's the biggest challenge in translating technical value into business value for buyers?
Yeah, I mean, AI is really good at prototyping. So it can make something that is convincingly good and seems to solve a problem, but might not actually solve that problem, right? And that's the trick right now is that AI, we used to have this thing called uncanny valley. It was very close to right, but it's kind of like there's this part of it that's just uncanny. It just doesn't fit. It's not like exactly right. I think we're just getting a little bit past that right now where this looks right. It doesn't look uncanny anymore. It looks just like something I would have built, but it's not right. And that's even more dangerous because we don't have this gut reaction when we look at it and we say that's a little bit, I mean, with pictures and images, we still do, right? That's clearly you can tell what's AI and what's not, at least for right now. But if you're talking about code, it's quite difficult to know. And so when you're looking at this output, you say it looks really good, but it's not. There's this hidden flaw in it. There's this broken assumption. And sometimes you can even use the system and it's working, but it's a total mess under the covers. I do a lot of presentations and I have this one image that I love. It's a downspout, right? So if you have water coming down from a house down a downspout and it has a L, right? And so it turns and goes out. And what happens is it's actually broken. The downspout is broken halfway down the house. And so the water is coming out of the downspout and kind of spilling. But there's a second problem where that horizontal piece has a hole in it. And the water's coming out the broken part and in the other broken part. And so it looks like it's working. Water does start at the start and ends at the end. But if you actually could see the whole thing, you could tell if it rains, there's going to be more water. It's going to miss the bottom. And it's going to just go everywhere. It's going to be a total train wreck. And that's the problem that we have today is that it looks pretty decent. It's convincingly good, but the way it's working is actually just making use of two mistakes. And it's held together with bubblegum and paper clips and it's barely working. It convinces some people and then you try to build on top of it and do secondary things and then it's a house of cards and everything falls down. And so the position that we're in right now is it's very important that you have some level of principles with what do you want this AI tool to do, and then some way of incorporating guardrails to keep the AI within those principles, right? Some people call it specifications as well. And so if I can specify it does this, it doesn't do this, it does this when it does that, these kind of basic knobs that you turn, and then you take what AI made and you say, okay, does it meet my specifications? right? Is it strong enough? Is it fast enough? Is it, whatever your specifications are? And odds are you'll find that your specifications are garbage, that you actually don't know what your specifications should be. And so what we're doing now is let's focus on not the code, not the end result of what the AI is making, but the way that we evaluate what the AI is doing and the specifications, right? The guardrails. How do we continuously improve those? And if that's what you focus on, that allows you to use more and more AI and make sure that what the AI is actually doing is what you want ultimately, right? So you don't end up with that like kind of broken down spout scenario where it looks convincingly good, but it's not going to hold up in the long term. And there's going to be a million mistakes, right? Everyone's going to be making mistakes as we do this. I think one common refrain that I have is it's all about progress, not perfection, right? We don't need perfect out the gate. We need to start somewhere. It needs to be good enough, and we need to keep getting better. We don't want to stagnate. We don't want to just allow it to deteriorate, because a lot of code bases, I keep talking about code because that's kind of where I live. But a lot of code bases, once AI gets in there, you just get a lot of slop. You get a lot of extra additions and noise and complex stuff, and the quality goes downhill quickly. And so it's like, great, well, that's a new specification. We want to have higher quality code. We want to have fewer lines of code change to get to the same result, right? Because more lines, more likely for bugs. And so to start thinking about what's the specification and iterate on that and have progress, not perfection. And then you really get on the right path to good AI adoption.
AI is a very powerful tool, but it's only as good as your context you provide it, right? If you don't provide it in the right context, and it's the power of the prompting. If you don't have the right prompt, to your point, it could look really good, but it's not sustainable. And I think AI today gets us 85, 90% of the way there, but those that are using it effectively know how to take that last 15 to 10% to finish it. Let me run something by you that I think is interesting, at least perceptually to me. Autonomous driving's been around for a while. If I get an autonomous driving car, I'm constantly making sure I'm not going to crash. And I get it. It's the potential impact is more dramatic, right? Life or death. But people don't just assume autonomous vehicles good, punch it in. I'm going to go read a book or take a nap. But with AI and in business processes, people seem to have a blind confidence that the AI is going to work, and they're not checking with it enough early on to validate. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It goes back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier, where if it feels convincingly good, if it feels right, people build on it, right? And so you have a process and you're like, oh, this is a good process. And that's kind of like tweak and tune and improve it or things like that. And what's tricky there is with the self-driving car example, the impact is very clear, right? When we go back to the risk analysis, the impact and likelihood, the impact is super clear. But for a process, maybe the impact is not as clear, right? Because in an organization, you might only be focused on a small part of the pie, a small part of that process. And so you might not know all of the downstream consumers or the relationships that might affect. And so I think that is the main problem, is that we're talking about context for AI. We need context for the humans as well. So if we're building this process, how do we get to the people more information about what this is going to be used for? And it's not just, who's the next consumer and you just look one step away, but can I step back and look at it from a much bigger perspective? And I think, ironically, AI will actually help us to do that, right? So if humans understand the impact of what they're building, what they're changing using AI more, I think that they'll start to critique it in more detail. And that's just kind of a natural thing, right? That's a risk management thing, but that's kind of more evolutionary. We want to live sort of instinct, loss aversion in humans. We are very wired to prevent losses more than we are to capture gains. But you don't have that loss aversion when you don't know what the impact of what you're doing actually is. And so if you have AI agents that are able to go do research on your behalf and feed you, even without you asking, what the impact of a mistake might be, that would be helpful both for the human and for the AI that you're using to build a thing. So what I'm talking about here, to be clear, is two different agents. One, an AI helping the human to build the thing, and a separate AI watching what you're doing, gathering context and saying that the impact of this could actually be very high or it is legitimately very low, which is another scary thing, because if an AI tells you it's legitimately low or high, that also could be misinformation or a mistake, right? A confabulation or a hallucination, right? So you have to double check these things. You have to use your critical thinking. I don't want to say that the solution is use more AI. There's lots of deterministic processes, standard things that don't use AI that you could use. But it is actually extremely powerful to use groups of AI agents and give them different personas and roles and have them check and validate and gather information and bring the context to the humans, just as humans bring the context to the AI so that they do the right job. I think the whole world is built on context engineering right now. And that's all that really matters. And so I think that if you're building knowledge bases, if you're accumulating data, you're doing the right thing. That's absolutely what we need to be doing right now. And then just find ways to wire it together, whether you're using AI to wire it together or not. We need to connect the dots more.
You operate a lean team. So, how much of your growth still depends on founder led sales and you closing business?
Yes, we do a lot of account-based work. Right now, our sales and marketing team, myself and a few others, have been in this field for a while. We have a lot of great relationships. We talk to them, see if they need help, and if they don't, we say we'll check back in 6 months. A lot of our current activity, pilots and things today, are coming from that scenario. But we're starting to expand, getting to the point where we're exhausting that like kind of a account-based approach and looking at things a little bit more broadly. And right now, I don't know. I love what I do. I love the tools that I've built, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And so I've seen a lot. I wouldn't say I'd seen it all, but I've seen a lot of different ways that it's succeeded and failed. And those, I think that the stories that you can tell in the sales conversation of where things have went well and where things have not went well, extremely powerful. And so because of that, I do end up leading a lot of the sales initiatives and the conversations to try to kind of like feed those sorts of things in. Um, just simply because my sales team hasn't been building this stuff for 20 years, right? They've been selling a variety of different products. And so a lot of it is me. I would say probably 70%, 60% of the deals are run by me today. And I'm an engineer historically. And so a year ago, I would say, "Oh, that's so difficult." I'm also an introvert. So how could you have all these conversations and whatever? Something has flipped in me recently where now I'm so excited and I see all of the positive benefits that the product that my platform is making in companies. And I'm able to tell these stories. And I honestly just have this enthusiasm. You probably have a real problem at your company right now. And I would love for you not to have that problem anymore. And so as a builder, I want people to use the product and see value out of it. I'm not here for the money. I want to see results. I want to see people actually focus on what they want to focus on and leave the details of guardrails, governance, observability for these coding agents to someone else and let them focus on whatever they're focusing on. So I will say that I actually, even though I'm doing, 60 to 70% of our lead sales right now, I'm also really enjoying it. And I wish I could do more and more of it every day.
So that's interesting. So if you think about where your biggest bottleneck is, whether it's on the commercial side with potential clients, with existing clients, or it's operational, where's that bottleneck that you'd like to eliminate?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, all business operations are a pain in my butt. Making sure the bills are paid and categorizing things like bookkeeping, doing any sort of trickle campaign or social media. That feels like toil to me. Mm. I know that it's important for a variety of different reasons, given in different scenarios. Um, that that is, I think most owners would say that that's the pain. Oh, right now I'm in the middle of negotiating a couple contracts, and what I would rather not do is negotiate a couple contracts, right? I mean, it's a good thing. That's what we need for the company to build. I need to be here to enforce my long-term vision into the contracts, make sure that we're equipped for the future, make sure that any contracts are lucrative. I need to be involved with these, but ultimately I want to help these companies achieve some result. I don't want to negotiate, intellectual property clauses or data protection agreements but that's the important thing that we need to do. So yeah, obviously I have an attorney. They help me do a lot of this sort of work. Well, the buck stops with me. I have to end up making some sort of a business-based decision or a risk-based decision. So I don't enjoy doing that sort of stuff, but I end up doing a lot of it repetitive work where it's not doing this podcast is a lot of fun because this is a interactive conversation. I can talk about stories and things that have happened recently. I enjoy doing this sort of stuff. What I would not enjoy doing is writing up 15 different versions of downstream social media posts pointing to this podcast to say, oh, look at this great stuff that John said on the podcast. Whatever, who cares, right? But again, if I did this podcast and we never posted it anywhere, it would be of very little value, right? Nobody could actually listen to the conversation, learn anything from what we're talking about. And so then why would we do it in the first place? You have to kind of market it and get it out to some degree. And so there's a balance there, but it can be that toil can be a little bit painful for me sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Where do you see Zenable in the next 12 months? What are the things that are slowing you down the most?
Well, we're definitely picking up steam. In January, people started to understand the question and start asking because they had more adoption of AI and they wanted more information and they wanted to put guardrails around it. So people are searching for and finding my tools on top of the account based work that we're doing. And so I'm doing a lot of pilots. Those pilots are converting at a very, very ridiculously high rate, which means that we're doing new customer onboarding. We're doing new environment provisions and spin up, and we're doing training for those companies, making sure they understand how to use it. And at the same time, I have to talk to the next round, the next group of people that are just starting to hear about me, that are searching for a product, looking for a solution. And so I'm kind of getting pulled apart, put in different directions, doing that sort of stuff. I don't expect that to stop. I think that we are just going to see more and more AI adoption. With more and more AI adoption, governance and guardrails are going to be really popular and important. Obviously, I'm going to scale out my operational, sales, marketing, and engineering teams. I'm going to stay focused on product because I've been doing this for 20 years. Not a lot of people have been building automation to do this stuff for 20 years. So they haven't seen the mistakes. They don't have the experience. So I'm going to stay focused on product and then sales, because again, those anecdotes are really powerful, and start to kind of grow those teams and add additional layers. I'm a big fan of flat companies. So when I say add layers, I mean add one layer. VP over a department and have them just run the whole department and have everybody report up to them. I don't like all the bureaucracy of layers deep. I don't like the idea of one-on-ones, recurring one-on-ones that are arbitrary, weekly, bi-weekly. We talk when we need it. And so that's something that I'm trying to institute in my company as well. Whereas if we've got a problem, we're open, we talk about it. We set a meeting and we resolve things. But I think many companies, as they get into these HR policies where managers need to have one-on-ones at least on a biweekly basis with all of their employees, and then managers just do nothing but have meetings with their employees, and it's not productive. And a lot of times you're making a decision in this one-on-one meeting that actually should have just been a regular meeting with 3 or 4 other people that are interested parties and involved. Why would we have this in the one-on-one scenarios? I expect to focus on product, grow out my teams a fair bit, stay involved with the sales process and just finding new people that have this problem, talk to them about my experience and what we're building and how it could work, and find out if it's useful to them, and especially get more engineers. So if anyone out there is listening and they have some good engineers that are looking for work, please send them my way. I definitely could use some more.
All right, fantastic. Hey, John, thanks a lot. Appreciate you sitting in and giving us the all access pass into Zenable. Thanks to those watching or listening. Until next time, I'm Troy Mant with Ascent Integration Partners. Remember, the pace of change in the market is getting faster every day. Adapting to change is not a requirement, but neither is survival. Rise above with Ascend. Take care.